Welcome to Valley Viewpoint. I'm Roger Johnson. My guest is Jim Byrnes. He is the Executive Director of Friends of Children of Walla Walla. Jim, welcome to Valley Viewpoint.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
You're here because of a volunteer, or at least a person that acts like she should be a volunteer.
She's quite the advocate for us, yes.
I think we're talking about Rita Schroeder.
Yes.
She said, you got to have Jim on, and I understand that you're going to be part of her church event coming soon, talking about this powerful organization regarding mentoring, and describe the history of Friends of Children of Walla Walla.
First of all, the event is the 24th. It's this Saturday. Coming up.
Yeah.
Over at Village Church. Mentoring, what we do is we provide mentors for children from anywhere from 4 years old on up through high school. It didn't used to be that young, but we've understood through adverse childhood experiences and resilience that 4 years old is a good place to start. We provide these mentors through a thing we call friend raisers, where we just basically find people that want to do this and want to be a part of a child's life for at least a year.
So this is not a fundraiser. This is finding something actually more valuable relationally, a human being, a friend raiser.
And to all our sponsors, theirs is most valuable as well. But yes, and they do fund us to find friends, and that's what we do. And we're looking all the time for friends to go to the different schools that we have.
Why is there such a great need? One of the reasons why I asked this question is that you happen to give me a brochure, and the statistics are quite, well, they certainly demonstrate that there's a need for Friends of Children of Walla Walla.
Sure. One of the groups that we're affiliated with is Children's Resilience Initiative, which has now become Community Resilience Initiative, headed by Terry Barilla. And what we've learned is that adverse childhood experiences affect all children. And that has been going on for quite some time now, 2-3 generations. And adverse childhood experiences, otherwise known as ACEs, was brought to light by the recent documentary Paper Tigers by Jamie Redford, Bob Redford's son, in which Jim Sporleader and was the principal of Lincoln High. And he had an interventionalist. They used to call them counselors, but now they call them interventionalists.
Oh, I see.
He has Brooke Boucher. Were fundamental in getting resilience into that school and conscious discipline, and finding out what's going on with the kids and what caused them to react and act the way they did. And they found out that there was these childhood experiences, these adverse childhood experiences, created things called triggers, and created a place for them to be safe in certain instances that somehow occurred because of whatever happened to them in childhood. And we have since found out that this is the #1 childhood trauma in the country, in this country.
So as an example to those watching, what would you say is high impact as far as ACEs, adverse?
Well, the number one antidote, I guess you want to say, is a mentor, is a caring adult relationship. And a lot of these kids don't.
And just share, Jim, what those statistics are regarding the needs out there relationally.
Sure. We have a lot of children who come from poverty. A lot of them are on the school lunch program, the federal school lunch program. We have one school where it's 100% school lunch. We have a lot of folks that come from families with one parent, or a lot of kids that have foster parents.
One of the statistics that brochure highlighted, 33% of the 16,000 children in our county, 16,700
Yeah, it's a
anyway,
large
we don't want to
number.
forget anybody.
It's a large number.
But 33% of those 16,000 and such many kids
Mm-hmm.
are not living currently with a parent, the biological parent.
Yeah, one of the parents is gone.
1/3,
1/3.
and then 21% are only living. The 21% are living with just one parent.
See, yes, that's true.
So when I add those figures up, over half, 33 plus 21, over half have trauma, relational trauma in their family,
Sure.
to the extent that there's a breakup.
And that's considered an ace.
Yeah.
It's one of the aces. It's primary in the deck of cards.
Yeah.
And the,
So you're trying to work with these studies that
Yes.
Terry Barilla has access to
She-
about
yeah.
why some kids shut down over these ACEs
Yes.
and others seem to have some resilience. And how do we mentor kids so that they can be more resilient from these ACEs?
Well, our primary function is to provide a caring adult relationship, and at least for 1 year. And there's various ways of doing it through 2 programs that we have. But over the course of time and over the course of the last year and a half, those 2 programs have kind of melded together a little bit. But
Talk about the traditional program
okay,
of Friends.
traditional program is the community-based program that was started by Doug Barham, who was a reverend, a Baptist minister back in the day, and he went around to different homes that were that looked to be poverty-stricken, and he wanted to find a way to save kids from being recruited by gangs. And he found a couple right off the bat, and he kept being persistent and knocking on their doors, and he mentored these 2 boys, who have later become very upstanding citizens here in the valley, and one of them has moved away, but I know he's a sheriff's deputy somewhere. But the other one is still here and quite prominent. And his brother had been in gangs, and so he was really saved from going into this. He the way the mentoring works is that you always have one favorite teacher, and it's usually a teacher, it seems, that gave you insight and gave you direction and really believed in you and asked you to step up within yourself to overcome those things that want to keep knocking you down, those negative things. And that's what our mentors do. We are friends, basically, with the child. And when they may not have that relationship, it doesn't mean that their parents aren't trying hard. Those who do have parents, because usually they have 2 or 3 jobs, and so a lot of times they're not at home when kids get off of school, and so that it's an idle hands kind of thing going on. But a lot of these kids start off with ACEs very young.
Big time, yes.
Some are born with them,
Mm-hmm.
and that comes to a lot of new evidence-based psychology that's coming out nowadays that talk about ACEs.
Let's talk, since you mentioned some are born with them.
Yes.
You have a term that has been biologically given a lot of credence lately.
Right, and that's called epigenetics. And I learned this through Terry Barilla and Brooke Boucher in the training, along with Jim Sporleader, who did some trainings as well. And they have been going around training people on what these things do and how we can overcome the effects of them. You'll never get rid of ACEs, but you can certainly give a vehicle in which to overcome them, and when they do occur. But anyway, epigenetics has to do with kids being born with the wiring in the brain is much like their parents, somewhat like the old adage way back when, and I think it's probably 200 or 300 years ago, where the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree, and that has to do with rewiring of the brain, and that's caused by certain chemical reactions within the brain. And it's a very interesting thing. And if I may, I could tell you one of the main. It's easy for me to remember,
Please.
and at my age, it's very
That's
important
significant.
that we
Yes.
get that. Anyway, so and one of those things is that they had a lab rat, and it's a mama lab rat,
So
And
this
what-
is a
lab rat.
genuine lab rat.
Yep, with a long tail and the little whiskers and the whole thing.
Okay.
And they took care of this lab rat, gave it everything it needed, everything a lab rat would need, and to be very, very, very comfortable, and almost like a pet. In fact, they treated it like a pet. And then at one point in time, they decided, okay, let's do this change, and let's give this pet something. And what they would do is that they took a cherry blossom frond, or a little branch, and when they fed the lab rat, and they would then start hitting it with this cherry blossom. And not to hurt it much, but it was annoying, I'm sure. And after a while, it became afraid of this cherry branch. And so when they would come out with it, it would run to the corner of its little lab box. And I'm probably destroying the story, but this is the way I hear it. And then the lab rat became pregnant and had little rats. And so they stopped doing the cherry blossom thing. But it was ingrained in this rat's brain, because they had certain chemical reactions when they were being attacked. And their flight and fright, it goes right to the corner, and they would escape. So when the little rats became big enough to see, and they would get the same treatment and were being fed, and they got eventually separated from the mom. And then one day they came in to the little rats, and they've never seen a cherry blossom before. And the person with the cherry blossom showed the cherry blossom. They didn't even have to hit the little lab rats. They went right to the corner. They'd never seen a cherry blossom before. And so their brains have been wired epigenetically. So and my apologies to Terry and the rest of the gang if I got this, somewhat off, but I think I'm about right.
But the emotional impact on you, this is the story that basically says that what parents do, what grandparents have done affects their children. In other words, every generation is affected genetically to some extent by how they react to life. And these ACEs, as you say, some are born with some setbacks because of parents and grandparents and how they live their life, their lifestyle.
It could happen to anybody, and ACEs cross socioeconomic lines.
Well, Jim, we're going to take a break here, and we'll be right back talking about Friends of Children of Walla Walla. We'll be right back with Jim Byrnes. I'm talking with Jim Byrnes. He's the executive director of Friends of Children of Walla Walla. And we were talking about epigenetics. And Jim, you were also sharing with me, and I'd like you to share with our friends out there on television what you shared with me regarding how that story about these ACEs, how is that manifested in, unfortunately, too many children in school?
Well, adverse childhood experiences causes a chemical reaction in the brain, having to do with the main two things is an overabundance of cortisol and an overabundance of adrenaline that are usually it's just a short period of time when those two chemicals are needed. But in those cases of adverse childhood experiences, they're overused by the brain and overproduced. And so a lot of that creates a situation where it can actually rewire the brain for when things happen and triggers are established, to where when that trigger happens and a child is in a certain situation, then they go back into a thing called a reptilian brain. And that reptilian brain is a place of safety, and where they just shut down. And sometimes they don't speak to you. They don't even acknowledge you. They can't maybe even say a sentence or whatever goes on until they come out of that safety spot, because that's where they are. And a lot of people don't recognize that actually as they recognize it as being insolent or
Depressed.
Yeah, depressed, and when
Angry.
the kid could be angry, any of those things. And so until you find out that, well, maybe it wasn't that. Maybe one of their things is that maybe they're homeless for the first time in their lives, and maybe they go from house to house, and maybe they do the couch surfing thing with the parents, and all kinds of different things.
Or maybe they're just totally absorbed in their smartphone.
That's well, you could do that too. Yeah, but those things, those kinds of that safety, that reptilian brain, it's just an area of safety that is created by the brain. Oh. And we're working on getting more and more training out to people to be able to do that. But as far as our friends of children of Walla Walla, getting back to that, that's why we have found that the earlier we can get to kids, the better. It's going to create a better atmosphere for them as they go through life, because ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, has been proven to cause very heavy medical problems later on in life, such as heart disease or COPD, or smoking, drinking, those kinds of things. Creates those things that kids get into, because of the way their brains have been wired and the way they've become over the course of time. But if we can catch them early, then a lot of these things don't necessarily have that overwhelming effect, because they have a mentor, they have had a positive influence, even for a year. And I talked to Doug Byrnes, because some of our kids have a mentor for 35 to 40 minutes a day, 1 day a week, through the school year in our ABC program.
And that's what I'd like you to focus in now. The traditional beginning was through Doug Byrnes going to that potential gang member and being a Christ figure to him. Although I remember as a pastor, he would say, "I want to be just like Jesus would be if he was here in the neighborhood." Sure. And although Friends does not have any sort of religious affiliation, right. Your new program, I would call it new from my perspective, is the ABC program.
Yes, sir.
And how you have found volunteers have really been, well, we just say it's easier to go to the school than go to a particular family's house.
Right. The community-based program was based on being matched up with a child, and you would go to the child's house, and there would have to be an interaction with the parents, and that would usually take at least an hour a week, and probably more. And you would take the child somewhere where they haven't been before, and the play date or whatever it is, take them playing soccer, or to go make pottery, or those kinds of things. Real fun things, great things. But we found that the ABC program is a lot easier for people to say yes to, as far as being a mentor.
So the volunteer, would go to the school
right.
during recess time?
Lunch and recess.
Lunch and recess
right.
time. And they would interact with that child approximately how long?
35 to 45 minutes, depending on the school.
And the studies, the pilot programs have been really encouraging?
Well, to give you some history, Davis School here in College Place was the main ABC program for 7 years, and didn't really go outside of that. But the results are incredible. Anecdotal evidence and the actual data from the school itself would say that the kids their deportment gets better. Their attendance gets better. The grades go up because of that. And so, boy, and you look at the kids when the mentors come in, they go running to them, and it's like, I wish they could stay here forever, and and all those kinds of things. And so I looked at that and I said, let's see if we can't do this somewhere else. And so the Walla Walla Public Schools said, try a couple of pilots here. And so we tried one at Blue Ridge and one at Prospect Point, and they were very successful with the kids we had in there. And so Wade Smith, the superintendent of Walla Walla Public Schools, came to town, and he and I spoke, and he decided that we should become partners in mentoring kids and bringing mentors to kids, and for recess and lunch. And so we started a couple of pilot programs at Sharpstein, and then Edison, then Byrnes, and then Green Park. And in between time, friends, a former principal was now working at the Blue Ridge Preschool and said, let's try one here. So we said, okay. And so we have a 4-year-old there. But all the pilot programs are working. And we have some incredible stories. At Prospect Point, I had a court-appointed special advocate give me a call a year and a half ago about this one boy. And he was having particular problems where he couldn't be in school for more than 30 minutes. And
that is short.
That's real short. And he got sent home. And it was because of emotional problems, and because of those emotional problems, learning problems. And so we found a community-based member who did not have a friend at the time, and I said, you want to come over here to do an ABC program here at Prospect Point? And he said yes. And so he went to Prospect Point, became this boy's ABC friend. And fast forward to the end of the year, he was allowed to come in for the full day.
What a change.
And then it came over to this year, and he improved and improved and improved. And we were able to have his mentor see him as a community-based child and as an ABC child, and mix the both together, depending on the schedule. And the best part of this whole story was an assembly a week and a half ago at Prospect Point, and he got the Principal's Award for the most improved student at the school. So coming from 30 minutes a day to most improved Principal's Award in a year and a half, it's amazing stuff. It's one of many stories that come out of the ABC program and of the CB program. But the ABC program is kind of our leader, in that folks are a little concerned about being mentors of kids, and what do I do, and how do I do it, and so forth. Well, why don't you try it out here at the ABC program? We now have programs in each elementary school in the Walla Walla Valley, except for there's one here that we don't. We're working on them. But we also have a peer-to-peer mentoring program for when kids leave Davis at 5th grade and go into 6th, they might be able to get a high school mentor from College Place High School. And so there's the peer-to-peer is the kids have to be 2 years apart in their age at least. And we did a pilot program on that, and we got 50% retention for the next school year, and so we're going to continue to grow that. We also had high schoolers from Wah High with our interventionist there, Melito Ramirez, and working with Pete Peterson, the principal at the time. We got 3 in a pilot program, 3 kids from Wah High to go through the fence at Prospect Point and see their kids, and that's worked out really well. So you're talking about generational change, because adverse childhood experiences didn't start yesterday. It started maybe a generation or 2 ago, and now we're going to start in helping these kids turn this around and to overcome these things, to where when they have kids, it's going to be a different story and maybe a different brain wiring, hopefully, and maybe even 2 generations from now, maybe we'll see a decrease rather than an increase. So it's very simple, and it's so effective, is mentoring and having a mentor at the school, and 35 minutes, 45 minutes a day. And in the
or a week, or depending on what is the normal volunteer with the ABC program? How many times do they go to the school?
Once a week.
Once a week.
They pick the day, and like we have a company that's paying its employees to go to Blue Ridge, and that's Walla Walla Valley Honda. They are saints. And they go there, and sometimes when they know they have to work and maybe sell a car or 2, then they change their day. And it's as simple as that. They just give us a call, and we let the school know, and the school lets the kid know that your mentor's going to be here tomorrow. Not today, but they'll be here tomorrow. And sure enough, they show up. But it's consistent. And it's letting them do, and letting them play, and just having somebody that listens to them when they come and see them.
Well, we'll have some information about how to get in touch with friends of Walla Walla on the screen. Maybe just summarize that for us as we complete the visit here today.
Sure.
How would they get in touch with you?
Well, they call us at 527-4745. We also have a fundraiser coming up August 15th
August 15th.
at the Marriott over on Rose, and we'll have some speakers there, some from the educational community, and we'll talk more about that because we've been able to get the entire Walla Walla University basketball team to sign up, and
Walla Walla University basketball team.
Well, yeah, and boy, I tell you, some of them are 6'5", and their friends are 3'8". And we had eight of the Whitman basketball team have kids over at Sharpstein School, and that was wonderful. It was an amazing story. And we're also looking at the Whitman baseball team, having mentors over at Green Park. So
Well,
it's just this constant thing. So just get a hold of us, and you can get a hold of us through the schools, but also look for fundraisers.
Jim, it's been wonderful to have you on Valley Viewpoint to hear about this encouraging program that pushes back and gives kids a chance, pushes back against those aces, and lets the kids thrive in many ways like you shared.
If I can say one more thing, it benefits the mentors just as much as the kids.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
It's 50-50. It's not 80-20.
great.
It's 50-50. It is really.
Thank you again,
It's amazing.
Jim. And thank you for joining us on Valley Viewpoint. I'm Roger Johnson.